wunderschönen guten Morgen wünsche ich euch. Schön euch zu sehen.
So, good morning. I wish you this morning.
Nochmal. Okay, das geht besser. Guten Morgen.
Oh, that was pretty weak. I didn't hear it. Good morning.
Hey, ihr Lieben, herzlich willkommen. Auch diejenigen,
So,
die jetzt per Livestream von
the
zu Hause
people in the building are kind of asleep,
zugeschaltet
but I
sind.
also would
Schön, dass
like
ihr
to
da
greet the
seid.
ones watching
Herrlich,
on
dass
live
Sonntag ist
stream or
und wir
online.
miteinander Gottesdienst
I'm
feiern
so
dürfen.
happy that
Wenn du
it's
mich nicht
Sunday,
kennst, wer
that
ist
we can
Marc?
have
Ich bin
our
der Pastor
church
dieser
service
Gemeinde.
today.
Ich freue mich sehr, dass wir heute
Worship God.
weitergehen dürfen in der
My name is
Predigtserie, in der wir uns
Pastor
heute
Marc.
gerade befinden. Die
I'm
Predigtserie heißt
the pastor here at this
Näher zu
church,
Jesus.
and I'm so happy
Näher
that we
zu
can
Jesus.
continue
Das
this
Ostern wird uns diese
sermon
Predigtserie
series
begleiten
talking
und wir
about getting
jede
closer
Woche
to
einfach einen
Jesus.
neuen Aspekt, neue Informationen,
Every
neue,
week
nochmal neu
in
Jesus
Lent, we'd
begegnen, um
like to
ihm
do a
näher
different
zu kommen.
aspect of
Denn nicht
how
nur
we
mit
can get
Osterhasen,
closer to
sondern um
Jesus.
Jesus dreht sich alles an Ostern.
Easter is not about
Letzte
the
Woche
Easter
sprachen wir
bunny,
über
but
die
it's
Sendung
about
Jesu. Das war
Jesus.
der Titel der Predigt.
Last
Es geht
week we
darum,
talked
um näher
about
zu
the
zeigen, was
mission of
sagt Jesus
Jesus,
von
why
sich
he
selbst? Was ist
came,
sein
what his
Programm? Was
agenda
ist der
was.
Grund seines Kommens? Was ist seine Sendung?
And
Er hat
it
uns
was
gezeigt, dass er uns mit auf
very
seine Reise nimmt
helpful to
in seiner
realize
Sendung.
why he was coming,
Um
that
jemandem
he
näher zu kommen,
wanted us to be
führt kein
part
Weg daran
of
vorbei,
his
dass man sich mit dem
life.
Gegenüber beschäftigt, oder?
So, what
Ich kann
is
niemandem näher
Jesus'
kommen, mit dem ich keinen
mission?
Kontakt habe. Ich kann
Today we're
niemandem näher kommen,
looking
mit dem
at
ich nicht Austausch habe,
getting closer
Kommunikation,
to
gemeinsame
Jesus
Erfahrungen,
and
gemeinsame Erlebnisse und so weiter. Das ist
and
ganz, ganz wichtig.
a little bit more
Und so
about
wollen wir uns
getting
heute
closer to Jesus.
eine
And
Situation
if we want
angucken,
to
in
get
der
closer to
Jesus
Jesus, we have to spend
beteiligt
time
ist,
with
wo
him. We
er
have to,
einer Person
or any
begegnet.
person, we have to spend
Wo
time
er
with him.
in
We
der
have to do
Situation
things
genauer
together.
reinschaut. Und ich
And
glaube, immer
that's the
da, wo
way it
Jesus
is
Menschen
with
begegnet,
Jesus.
ist
We have
ist es
to
schon
have an
immer eine
encounter with
Geschichte
him,
für
do
uns,
things
weil wir
together.
auch heute noch glauben,
And
dass
today
Jesus
we want
lebt
to look
und dass er
at
uns begegnen
a
möchte. Und wir meinen das
situation
ernst,
where
wenn unsere
somebody
Vision lautet, Jesus
encounters
begegnen. Ich
Jesus
sag's nochmal, da oben steht es ganz, ganz groß. Wir
and
glauben das.
realize
Jesus will dir begegnen.
we realize
Jesus
that
wünscht sich,
Jesus is
dass du
alive.
ihm näher kommst. Das wünscht er sich für mein Leben und auch für
We
deins.
believe that Jesus is
Ich
alive.
möchte meiner Predigt heute
We
Morgen
believe
lauten
he
wie
wants to
folgt.
have a relationship with everyone.
Rufe laut. Rufe laut.
So the title of my
Wir
talk
lesen mal den
today is
Predigtext. Ich habe ihn hier
Call
vorne
on
vorliegen
Him.
und du darfst ihn
Call
gerne
out loud.
mitverfolgen hier vorne aus Markus 10. So erreichten sie Jericho. Als Jesus und seine
And
Jünger die
we'll be
Stadt
reading now
verließen,
from Mark
folgte ihnen
10,
eine große
starting with
Menschenmenge.
verse
Ein blinder
46.
Bettler namens
Then we came to
Bartimäus, der
Jericho,
Sohn des
as
Timäus,
Jesus and
saß
his
am
disciples,
Straßenrand,
together
als
with a
Jesus
large crowd,
vorüberging.
were leaving the
Als
city.
Bartimäus hörte, dass Jesus von
A
Nazareth
blind
in der
man,
Nähe war, begann
Bartimaeus,
er zu
which
schreien:
means son of Timaeus,
Jesus,
was sitting by the
Sohn
roadside
Davids,
begging.
hab Erbarmen mit mir.
When he heard that it was
Plötzlich
Jesus of
sah
Nazareth,
niemand ihn
he
an,
began to shout,
aber er schrie
Jesus,
nur noch
son of
lauter:
David, have
Sohn
mercy on
Davids,
me.
hab Erbarmen mit
Many
mir.
rebuked him and told him to
Als
be
Jesus das
quiet, but he
hörte,
shouted all
blieb
the
er
more,
stehen und
Son of
sagte:
David,
Sag
have
mir,
mercy
wer
on
der
me.
kommt. Da riefen
Jesus
sie den
stopped and
Blinden
said,
an.
Call
Nur
him.
Mut, sagten sie.
So they
Komm,
called to the
er
blind
ruft
man,
dich.
Cheer up,
Bartimäus
on
warf
your
seinen Mantel
feet.
ab,
He's
stand
calling
auf
you.
und kam zu Jesus.
Throwing his cloak aside, he
Was
jumped to
soll
his
ich für
feet
dich
and came
tun?
to Jesus.
Fragte Jesus.
What do you want me to do for you? Jesus asked him.
Meister, sagte der
The
blinde
blind
Mann,
man, Rabbi, I want to see.
ich möchte sehen.
Go, your
Da
faith has
sagte Jesus
healed
zu
you.
ihm: Geh nur,
Immediately he
dein Glaube
received
hat
his
dich
sight
geheilt.
and
Im
followed
selben
Jesus
Augenblick
along the
konnte der
road.
Blinde sehen. Dann folgte er Jesus auf seinem Weg. Herr Jesus, ich danke dir heute Morgen für dein Wort. Ich danke dir für deine Gegenwart und dass
Dear
du
Jesus, I thank you for your word today,
kommen möchtest. Ich bete darum, dass du mir Gnade schenkst, zu predigen,
that you're alive and
aber
that
ganz
you
auch
want
Gnade,
to
zuzuhören und zu verstehen,
have a
was
close
verborgen ist
relationship with
aus dieser
us,
Begegnung, die du hattest mit
and
diesem
help us to
blinden
understand
Bartimäus.
what
Jesu
you
Namen.
want to teach us today,
Amen. Amen.
and
Ich will mal
see
fragen,
how it
warst
was
du
for
schon mal in
Bartimaeus.
einer Notlage?
Amen.
Hast du dich schon mal in einer
I'd
Situation
like to ask
wiedergefunden,
you,
in
have
der du
you
dich
ever been
fragen
in a
musstest:
situation of
Alter Schwede,
dire
was soll ich
distress
machen? Was kann der nächste Schritt
where
irgendwie
you
sein?
were asking
Wie komme
yourself,
ich da
what
raus?
in the
Wie
world
soll es
can I
jetzt
do?
weitergehen?
How can this even
Derzeit
go
oder schon
on?
seit längerem
I have no idea.
wird in den Nachrichten immer wieder über das Thema
In the
Seenotrettung im
news,
Mittelmeer
we're
berichtet.
hearing
Hast du
often
sicher
about
auch gehört.
people that are in
Viele
the
Menschen verlassen ihre
Mediterranean
Länder in der
Ocean,
Hoffnung, nach Europa
Mediterranean
zu gelangen, um
Sea, and
hier ein
they're
besseres Leben
um,
beginnen zu können. Die Gründe für
left
ihre
their
Flucht sind
homeland. They're
unterschiedlich,
trying to get
aber
to
Fakt
Europe
ist, dass sie,
because they
weil sie
believe they will
versuchen,
have
auf
a
die
better
andere
life
Seite zu
here.
kommen, eine
And
große
they have
menschliche
different
Not
reasons
erleben.
why they're
Und
fleeing,
nicht
but
wenige auf dem Weg.
they're just trying to get to the other side of the
Wie
Mediterranean
fühlt
Sea,
man sich wohl, wenn man
and
in einem kleinen,
they
vollkommen
have great danger because the boats are overfilled. They're maybe not in good repair, kind of leaky. They're overfilled, and things happen, storms come up, whatever, and it's not unusual that people will drown on the way to try to get to Europe. And so how do you think they feel when they're crammed into this boat that was just overflowing, and they're sitting there and hoping that they'll finally see land, and they're drifting along with the current and just captive to what other kind of weather comes along. And it seems like it's a difficult situation. And the Gospel of Mark is also talking about a person that's in terrible distress in his situation. And to see it in context, Jesus had told his disciples already for the third time that he was going to suffer and he would even be killed. And they were making their way to Jerusalem where this is going to happen. He's told them about it, but they really can't wrap their heads around it very well. And Jesus has had the climax of his work. We talked about his mission, the things that he came to do, and he's done this. And he's finishing the work that God gave him to do. And the thing he only needs to finish is to get to Jerusalem and go through this suffering and being killed, being crucified. Next week is Palm Sunday, and we'll be thinking about the entry that Jesus had into Jerusalem. And it's a wonderful thing to talk about, but we'll be doing that next Sunday. This week we'll be talking about a man that had a desperate situation. It was a blind beggar called Bartimaeus. He was sitting on the side of the road and trying to beg, asking for alms. There were groups of pilgrims that were traveling this route. They were going past Jericho on their way to Jerusalem, just like Jesus, for the same reason, at least for going to this required celebration. And so the religious and very pious people were passing him, and considering what they were going to, then they were maybe more willing than usual to give alms to the needy. This was a very well-traveled road, and so it was a good idea if he was going to beg that he would be here at this place to try to get money to support himself or his family. Now, try to imagine, just close your eyes a minute and try to imagine what it's like to be blind. This permanent darkness. Somebody's trying to shake your hand, and you don't know in what direction the hand is coming from. You don't see it. And imagine you would open your eyes and try to see that hand, but you see nothing. Everything's black. So you may open your eyes now. I think we all can agree that if we would be blind, that our daily life would be very difficult. A lot of the freedoms and possibilities that we're able to have every day, they would be greatly reduced. We couldn't just go someplace, for example, to a certain place to get something to eat, a sandwich or whatever. I mean, we'd have to figure out kind of a map in our head, how many steps to go in this direction, and then turn maybe to the right, and maybe you have to feel for a tree, and then you know you're made it to the right place, and then at that tree you go left or whatever. I mean, it'd be so complicated. And because Bartimaeus couldn't see, he had to be more attuned to information from his other senses. And so his hearing became very fine-tuned. He could hear exactly what was going on around him. it says in the Gospel of Luke that he asked other people what was going on because he could tell there was a great commotion going on. It was not like a few quiet conversations from people, little groups of people that were walking past him. It was a great commotion. This was unusual. And the answer was Jesus was on his way and a great crowd was following him. And he's asking, he said, what's going on here? What's going on? Jesus of Nazareth is on the way. He's going on this road. And I asked myself, isn't maybe this story about blind Bartimaeus that's in this desperate situation, isn't it similar to mine in your story? Aren't we in a similar situation? Yeah, okay, as far as I can tell, we all are able to physically see. We're not blind. Okay, maybe we need a pair of glasses or contact lenses, but you know, we can basically see. It's more than just shadows. It's more than just having darkness when we open our eyes. But there are parallels nonetheless, because we can be spiritually blind. And everyone here has been or still is spiritually blind. Before I had Jesus come into my life, I was spiritually blind just as much as Bartimaeus was physically blind. I didn't need spiritual glasses or contact lenses to put on top of me. I needed completely different spiritual eyes. And I was not able to see what truth was. And I was just kind of feeling it through, trying to figure out the way. But I had a yearning to know what the truth was. And I met Jesus. And he didn't just give me a spiritual band-aid or glasses or whatever, but he gave me a healing of my spiritual side so that I could recognize him and have a relationship with him. But you know, that's not just a spiritual thing, but Jesus also can have healing, save us in natural things that happen in the world, because we all get into difficult situations. Is everything always going perfectly in your life? I doubt it. I mean, we have challenges, we have illnesses, we have financial distress, we have other difficulties. I mean, we can't have any sort of a life insurance policy that we can pay money into every month or whatever to make sure we don't have these things. It's not going to work. And that's just part of being on the earth, in this world. I'd like to kind of talk about a situation that I had that was for me a desperate situation, and show you a parallel to Bartimaeus. And when I was a student studying theology, I tried to, take care of my finances and make sure that I didn't spend more than I had. I tried to be frugal and responsible, but all of a sudden the rent went up and the gas prices went up and whatever, and my fixed expenses, there was nothing I could do about it. My income was not matching my expenses, and I had no idea how I could fix that and how it could be better. And I was, that's a situation when you see it's going to be a long-term situation, you can lose sleep about it. And I thought, oh, well, I don't know what I can do. I mean, I either have to go get a little job on the side to have more income. That would help. But then on the other hand, I couldn't have this internship or whatever in the church here that was giving me good practical experience. But on the other hand, I wasn't getting any income for it. and it was just both would be too time consuming, and I couldn't do both. But I had a bad situation with my finances, and I didn't know how I was going to figure it out. And I'll tell you in a minute how I worked through it. But I just want to go back to the situation with Bartimaeus and say, even when things aren't going smoothly, and you see, like, I'm not really on the fast route to success, but I'm more like the beggar on the side of the road, just like Bartimaeus, then still shouldn't give up. You shouldn't throw the towel in and just wallow in despair. There is still ground for hope. And we can be full of hope even if we're in note, because we can scream just like Bartimaeus, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. It seems like Bartimaeus knew something about Jesus. He had probably heard already about him. He must have heard that Jesus could teach in authority, that a lot of people were healed by him. And he realized, when he heard that Jesus was passing by, he realized this is his one chance, that his desperate situation can be brought to an end. He can be healed. This is his one chance. And when he realized that, there was a faith that rose up in him, that if I can just get his attention, if I can just take advantage of my one chance here, that's all it needs. And so he screamed, he said, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And the first, probably the people that were around him, I mean, it's a huge crowd, and they were probably concentrated on Jesus, and maybe he was saying something or so, and they were trying to hear him. And so they had this person on the outside of the crowd, and he was shouting and trying to get attention and stuff. And I can imagine that people were trying to tell him, hey, this is a celebrity. This is a great personality. We have to behave here, and you're out of order, and so shut up. Or, maybe they said it not so nicely. And so, I mean, they probably reacted like that around him. But just imagine that there's a person in the ocean that's drowning, and they don't know how to swim, and there's absolutely no way with their boat or whatever, if things around them, that they can get any help, and they're panicking, and they're slamming on the water, and they're waving their arms and trying to think of how did people swim, what were the emotions that they had, but they're just, they can't think straight. And so they're going to scream, they're going to try to get attention of a ship that's going by, if they're close to shore, of people that are maybe sunbathing or whatever, that if they can just get their attention, then they can get some help. They aren't going to think, oh, I can't bother them. They're trying to take a little nap on the beach in the nice warm sunshine, and they're on vacation. They can't have any trouble right now. I mean, that's not going to fly. They're going to do whatever they have to do. And so maybe you're in a similar situation with Bartimaeus. You're in distress. You have need, and Bartimaeus knew what his need was. He didn't have to think about it. Oh, what could I ask Jesus? How could Jesus help me? I know he helps people. How could he help me? He didn't have to think twice. He knew what the problem was. And when Jesus came by, he called, and we can call without even worrying about it. We know we need a Savior. And Bartimaeus knew that. And so he didn't hesitate to call on Jesus. And we have problems. We are separated from God through sin, just because of who we are and how we live, how we think, what we do. We don't do things the way God is pleased to have it done. We just don't. We can't be perfect. We try, maybe, and we're not able to. We all miss the mark. And we're just like a person in the middle of the ocean, and we need somebody to come and save us. When I had these financial problems, of course, it wasn't from like life and death, like from one second to the next, but it was a very grave situation, and I knew that God could help me, and so I prayed at least daily, probably much more than that, without even calling it officially prayer. But I prayed that God would help me find a way out of this, and that things would get into balance again. And I also decided in my heart that, some people don't talk about their problems, but I decided that if anyone would ask me and sincerely want to know, how I'm doing, that I would tell them briefly about that. Uh, and and I was just so thankful that I could talk to God about this problem and that I could give him this burden, at least partially. I could leave it with him when I prayed, and I could trust him that he would do something about it, because I certainly couldn't. I couldn't figure it out. And that's the important thing. We have to realize that even when we're in this situation of a need and we don't know what the solution is, how it's going to go down, we just know we have to go through it, at least right now. But we know who we can call to. We can call to God. And Jesus heard the screaming of Bartimaeus. He heard it. And what was his reaction? He didn't say, "Oh, he's being so disruptive. He's a troublemaker." He didn't do that. He didn't say that. He didn't keep on going and say, "Oh, let's go faster and get out of this place." No. In contrary, he stopped. If you read a little bit before this passage, then you'll see that Jesus had already told his disciples that he had not come to be a master, that he had to be served by slaves, that he had been come to be a slave to other people, to serve others. And it just wasn't a nice way of thinking, nice and flowery, but it was really his agenda. It was really his mode of operation. And he lived that so much that he didn't think twice. When he heard Bartimaeus, he heard he was in need. He didn't go past him. He zeroed in on the fact that he needed help and he was going to serve him. And it didn't even matter that he had his own problems. He could have been very preoccupied with his own problems because he was on the way to suffer and be killed in Jerusalem. And that could be very, kind of keep your focus some other place. But yeah, here he is. We don't know if the people that talk to him now that are in the crowd, we don't know if it's the same people that had told Bartimaeus to be quiet, if they're now telling him that he can go to Jesus. But at any rate, people did tell him that. And they encouraged him. They said, "Yeah, he's calling you, go." And he could hardly believe his luck, but it's not really his luck. That he could hardly believe it. Oh wow, he's going to be face to face with Jesus. And he was so happy he threw his cloak aside so that he could go to Jesus faster. He could get there faster and not have this thing wrapped around flattering around his legs and stuff. And so he's absolutely going to have that which he had hoped for. And so he gets in front of Jesus and stands in front of him. And what do you think happens? Jesus starts the conversation and asks him the question, "What do you want me to do for you?" Now that's a stupid question, don't you think? I mean, this person has been screaming and he's blind, and it's pretty obvious that he wants to be able to see. But you know what? Jesus has an agenda. He wants to hear the man himself. He's giving him respect by letting him speak for himself and not speaking for him. But he's also giving him the possibility not just to talk about his need, but also to talk about his faith in Jesus, that Jesus will take care of his need. This was his chance. And so Bartimaeus answered Jesus with the utmost respect, saying, Rabbi, I want to see. And Jesus said, Go, your faith has healed you. And immediately his sight was restored, or he received his sight, and then he followed Jesus along the road. And you might think, well, this is a kind of a strange way of talking about it. Why did Jesus say your faith has healed you? We weren't talking about faith. We were talking about being blind and seeing. How did that happen? Well, what did Bartimaeus believe in? He had heard about Jesus. When they said Jesus is here, he didn't say, who's that? He knew something about Jesus. And the thing he knew about Jesus, he believed. And he believed that Jesus was able to not only heal a lot of other people, countless other people, but he also believed that Jesus would heal him. This trust in Jesus would not be disappointed. And this was the thing that paved the way for his faith and his healing. You know, the word healing and salvation, the English words that we use for that are actually for the same Hebrew idea, meaning it's a holistic thing. You're healed, but you're also saved. And so he was not only healed in his physical sight, but he also had his spiritual eyes open and knew Jesus even more. And Jesus was just the Messiah. He was the love of God, and who wouldn't want to follow him? And so that's exactly what he did. He became a disciple on the spot. Now, to go back to my story, how the solution came or whatever. One evening I was doing a youth church service and talking to a friend from this church about this and that. Then he asked me, oh, how you doing? And so I mentioned my financial situation. And, well, the evening came to a close and didn't think anything about it any longer. And a couple of days later, I got a call from him, and he said he and his wife had prayed about it, talked about it, and they decided to pay his monthly expenses for room and board until he had graduated. I can't tell you how happy I was. And that was so wonderful how they got me out of this bind. And I was so, so thankful for this generous support. And I hadn't done anything more than to talk to God about it. And God had given me wonderful help through these generous friends. So I would like to tell you in a conclusion that God knows your feelings. He knows your fears, your worries, your financial need, your disease, your sickness, conflicts you're going through, any sort of desperation that you have, doubt. He knows about relationships that are broken. You can call on him and he will heal you. He will help you. He will take away your doubt, your worries, your fears. your needs, your desperate needs, and He will give you wisdom how to deal with things and how to bring relationships into order, no matter what's happening. Maybe you're a little bit skeptical about this. Maybe you think, oh yeah, then I would have to go to church all the time, and I'd have to go to small group meetings, and I don't want to do all this. And church hasn't been that nice to me, and I really can't do anything with it. But we're not talking about church. We're talking about God. We're talking about when you have a need, when you're broken, that God can help you. You can call on Him. He can help you. He can heal you. Call out to Him. Say, Jesus, Son of God, Son of David, have mercy on me. It isn't just for me or for all of these people that are following Jesus. It's also for you. Jesus says, what should I do for you? He wants to give you this gift of salvation and healing. Now, I know that the church has maybe not been good to people, and maybe Christians haven't been good either. And you're disappointed and you're hurt, but that's not God. That's not Jesus. He can take care of your spiritual sickness, the cry of your heart, all the desperate problems that you're stuck in. And just as He answered my problem with my finances, He's ready to answer your problems and to help you. Call Him. Take Him seriously. I'd like you to close your eyes a moment and just think about this. I'm convinced that when I was speaking about Bartimaeus and his encounter with Jesus, that there was something in your heart that was going on. And you have a note, a need, a desperation, something that's not in order. Use this holy moment and for something that's in your life, in your heart. Call out to God. Call out to Him loud. He hears the cry of your heart. They can be screaming. Your mouth can be closed, but your heart can be screaming. He hears. Jesus, today you're posing the question, what do you want me to do for you? And we're casting all of our worries, all of our needs, all of our troubles, we're casting them all on your shoulders. And we know, Jesus, your arm is not too short. And we plead with you, please don't pass us by. Stop. We want to give you the control over this. We know you can do that. We know you're in control of the whole world. But things in our lives where things are broken or trying to break down, they're really hanging by a thread. If they're relationships or other things, finances, whatever, you can heal them. If maybe there's loneliness, maybe there's just being disappointed in people around us, being disappointed in the institution of the church. Whatever it is you want to hear, you want to come to us. Maybe there is a marriage that's not a place of healing and love like you wanted it to be. And we know that you can save, you can heal. I know, God, that you've also revealed by your Holy Spirit places in our hearts where we're needing spiritual healing, not just these physical things from the world around us that are so out of balance, but also our spiritual eyes are blind and we don't have a relationship with you. And we want to get close to you. Jesus, we love you. And everyone said, Amen.